Hi there, my name's Simon Currigan, and welcome to this webinar about getting the most from the in-school parent sessions that are part of your Behaviour 360 package. This webinar will probably last about 20 minutes. I'm just going to walk you through how to get the best out of them, some pitfalls to avoid, some good practice, what the workshops actually are, and how you can use them to best effect in your school. I want to think about the why behind these workshops before we dig into how to actually run them. What I will do is actually I'll guide you through exactly where to find them, where to find the support materials, then how to use them. I'll run you through a typical session. We've got 3 of the workshops at the moment. We've got one based on anxiety, one to support parents whose child have a diagnosis or their child's on the pathway to having a diagnosis of ADHD, and another one for autism. And the way they look is each set of those. So the ADHD comes with a set of 6 workshops that are designed to be run once per half term. So you've got a set of workshops that run across the year. So you run one, say, in the first half of autumn term, then the second half of autumn term, first half of spring term, second half of spring term. So you've got 6 sessions to support parents whose kids are struggling with anxiety, 6 sessions to support kids who are have ADHD or are on the way to a diagnosis of ADHD, and then similarly 6 sessions for parents whose kids are on the way to a diagnosis of autism or have an autism diagnosis. Now, I suggest you kind of break those half term, half term, half term, half term. I know there are schools out there that have actually done it in 6 weeks. They've done it every 6 weeks because the parents are actually so engaged and they wanted to come back and talk to each other and have the information. So you know your parents better than I do. You know your demographics, you know the needs of where you currently are. So definitely adapt these to suit the needs of your school. What we found when we started running these and developing these was really sometimes schools find it hard to get parents to come in and engage with sessions in school, especially when you're looking at something that is multiple sessions. Okay, so this isn't a one-off. This is, a continuity coming in every so often. But when we ran these, it was really like pushing on an open door because there are lots of parents out there that are struggling to get support, especially around mental health, especially around anxiety right now. Parents who are struggling to speak to medical professionals or family support teams or other forms of support out there around their concerns and worries for their children around whether they have ADHD or autism. More and more external agencies have bitten the dust, and that's left a real vacuum there. Um, so actually, what we found is when you promote these and when you let parents know they're going to run, actually, you don't have a significant issue because parents are desperate for this information. They want to know how to support their children and they want to meet with like-minded parents. Another thing this does is really improve relationships with parents, especially SEND parents who have kids who have special needs. And that's a really positive thing because sometimes I think schools are getting blamed for if a child has, significant needs and the school applies for an EHCP and that gets not backed by the authority. Often schools kind of take the brunt of that. They take the blame for that. Or sometimes parents want their children to have additional support in school and budget doesn't allow it. Not everyone can have a one-to-one and so on. And that can create some friction sometimes with SEND parents. And what this does is actually give them something they really want. It gives them practical, useful information about supporting their child. And it really creates positive relationships. It gives parents that really value. And they talk to other parents about it too. So it creates this culture about, we're supporting parents in school. The school, from the parents' point of view, is a good place to come because they can get that input with staff. They really value it. And actually, you don't have many difficulties getting them to come back time after time after time. So the approach that we took with these workshops was to look at best practice from other fields, actually. The first thing to understand about the workshops is it's not bringing parents in for half an hour of training about how to support their child. I'm going to go with your anxiety. Let's go with the anxiety one. Yeah, it's not a half an hour of training for your parents about how to support their child with anxiety, because what you tend to find is those kinds of sessions, people turn up for the first and then they don't turn up for the second or the third, and attendance drops off. They're not what I would describe as sticky in terms of parental engagement. What we found when we looked at the research was what creates that stickiness where parents come time and time again is actually when they form connections, social relationships with other people in the room. When they find out that there's other families in the room going through the same difficulties that they are. So to give you an example, there was a session where one of the parents, I remember, she was talking about, it was the anxiety one, and she was talking about the difficulty she had. Her child didn't want to come into school in the morning at the edge of the playground. Every single morning they would have this situation where the child would get upset. They'd try to go home. The parent felt like she was trying to drag the child into school. On the way to school every morning, they'd be walking in and the parent would be getting butterflies, and presumably the child was getting butterflies too, because they knew there was going to be this explosion of emotions every morning, which is horrible for everyone. And as she was talking about that, another person in the room said, yeah, that happens to me as well. We have the same thing, and my child is older than yours. And the original parent started to say things like, oh, I thought it was only me. And then the other parents in the room sort of come together and they give support to each other. And that is what you're after, that moment of connection, because then parents come back time after time after time, because they've formed those connections, and school becomes a way of facilitating parents helping each other. So when they go out of school now and they're having difficulties, they don't have to wait for the next workshop. They see other parents on the playground, they form that camaraderie, they form those bonds, they can share ideas with each other. It feels safe. So that is the approach we took. The other thing I'll say is that the facilitator, the person who runs these sessions in school, is never put on the spot. I'll take you through what that looks like in a moment. So here's what a typical session will look like. It's run in school. So the first thing you will need to do is book, and here's a pro tip here. You want to book the first 2 dates. So let's imagine you're doing half-termly, like I recommend. Let's say you book a date in for 2 weeks. You pick a Friday in 2 weeks' time. And then in the diary, I'd also pick the next session you're going to run. So it might be Friday in the second half of autumn term in November, say. So at the moment it's September. We'll do one in October and we'll do one in November. Why? Because at the end of the first session, you want to be able to give your parents the date and time of the second session so they can stick it in their diaries, their phones, or whatever there and then. So they're not just sort of walking away from the first session. They're going into the ether. You worked hard to get these people in the room, but then they're gone and they've dispersed, and you've got to try and wrangle them together again. So pro tip, when you're booking your first date, don't just book the first date, book the second date as well. So you'll promote this, you'll send out letters, emails, or whatever to say, we're running, I'll pick anxiety as an example, we're running sessions to support parents whose kids are struggling with anxiety right now. You probably also will have specific parents and families where you know this is an issue, so you want to have side conversations with them as well if you don't see them signing up. Put the time and date out, and as always with these things, bribe people with cake, bribe them with cups of tea and coffee or biscuits or whatever you've got available. And talk about, when you're promoting this, how there'll be useful strategies that they can use to support their child with anxiety. Now, what happens with the way these are laid out is people come for the strategies or the information about how to support their child, but they stay for the community. They stay for the network, and the network bit, that the social connection bit, is the thing that keeps them coming back time after time. So on the date, I don't know, maybe have 10, 15 parents coming out. What you will need is a computer set up. You need some tables set out. Obviously, you want your drinks, your teas and coffees and your biscuits. You'll need a whiteboard, a projector with sound. So if you're using a TV, you need to be able to plug your laptop in and mirror your laptop with sound to the TV. If you're using one of the projectors, you will need speakers. So what you want to do is you want to make sure you plug that in before the parents turn up and double check you've got everything working. You will also need an internet connection because you're going to be streaming a video. The other thing I'd say is the presenter, if you're the person running this, facilitating this, you're never put on the spot. But if I were you, if you're running the one on anxiety, I'd quickly watch the videos on anxiety inside the strategy hub. If you're doing the ADHD one, I'd watch one of the ADHD resources that we got. Or similarly with autism, although autism is broken out into things like sensory needs, um, I would personally watch those videos. You can get away without doing it, but it's good to have some background information about what you're going to talk about. So how do we find them? What do the materials look like? I'm going to show you one of the key things first. I'm going to show you how to find the facilitator's handbook. And that is super, super important, because the facilitator's handbook, let's say it's you running the session, it tells you exactly what to do and say in what order. So you literally, it's like a really prescriptive lesson plan that you can take. You know, you don't want to hold it in front of you and read it out, but you can have it on a table in front of you. It guides you through all the key points in the session. You're never put on the spot. So let me just share my tab for a moment. So here I've logged into Behaviour 360 already. So we've got the dashboard, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to scroll down to the family support section. I'm going to click on family support, and then you can see you've got the three parent support sessions here. So there's the one on ADHD, there's the one on anxiety, and there's the one on ASC. So I'm going to click on anxiety. Let's use that as the example. And here, this is the key thing. This is the facilitator's handbook that shows you how to run the sessions. So what do those sessions look like? Well, let me share. Well, actually, I'll run through them first, and I'll give you an example from the anxiety sessions. They all follow exactly the same format, except for the first one. Expect the sessions to last about 30 to 35 minutes. If they overrun, it's not a problem. In fact, if you find they consistently overrun, I'd break them into two halves. We'll look at that in a moment. They start it with a check-in, just like, how's everyone doing? Everyone okay? Then we have a rule reminder, which is basically, there's some group rules for the session, but basically what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas is one of the key ones. So what we talk about in this room may be private, so we don't blab it to everyone on social media. We don't blab it to other parents or other families. You know, we're going to respect people's privacy here. And another key one is we don't give other parents advice. All we do is we share our own experiences. I'll talk about that in a moment. Then there's a key question. So you put a slide up on the whiteboard that's got a key question for the parents to discuss, and then they go away and talk about that. So it's a discursive session, and then at the end of, say, 5 minutes, you bring them back together and ask them to share what was coming up in their conversations. And when you do that, it's really interesting, because you'll start picking out things, and you'll see people nodding on the other side of the room. Once people are nodding, you know that they're starting to make connections and realize that other parents are in the same boat as they are. Then there's usually a video that you just press play on. So in the example we're going to look at about the anxiety, it might look at a specific type of anxiety, or it might look about the emotional element of anxiety. If on the ADHD sessions, there are sessions on keeping kids organized, or why they might look unfocused, or why they might have difficulty being focused. So there's a 5-minute video. All you have to do is press play on that. It will usually discuss, you know, some information, some science, and then give some strategies and some ideas. Then there's a problem solving question. So it's a slide that goes on the board. You get your parents to work together to solve the problem or discuss the question that's on the board, share their ideas. And then in the, you'll have some slides with them too, but in the presenter's guide, you'll also have some extra strategies to share with your parents that they might not have thought of. Then there's a summary section, and then basically we share the next date before everyone leaves the room, so everyone can stick it in their phone, and your attendance next time will be higher, and it will also be easy to you know, wrangle people back into the room. So let's have a look at the handbook. Just bring it up here. Right, so I'm going to come right to the top to start with. So there's the anxiety handbook. So this is for you if you're running the sessions. It has got literally everything you need to know. So it gives you an example, session overview, which is what I've just talked through. And then it gives you, examples of group rules. You might want to change those if you do. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to jump to session 2, so you can see the kind of detail that you get. So you're told about what the session will focus on, the signs and symptoms associated with anxiety. It tells you everything you need to collect, but pretty much every time it's going to be a flip chart paper, an easel and some marker pens. Starting formally by welcoming everyone into the group. It's very, very simple. There's the rule reminder. And then it starts telling you, this is the focus is going to be on understanding some of the signs and symptoms. The key question is, what does anxiety look or sound like for your child? And then it gives you some pointers. So bring out the point. No two children are the same. Their anxiety may look different for them depending on their age and situation. All of this is timed. You don't have to stick to the timings. But if you do, you'll kind of stay within that 35-minute time window. It tells you what's in the video. It gives you another activity. Encourage parents to explore what could help to connect the physical symptom to the emotion of anxiety, and what may increase anxiety and make it worse. So it literally breaks down every part of the session step by step, so you know exactly what to say and do. And of course, if the conversation goes in a different direction, you don't have to stick rigidly to the plan. This is about your parents connecting and talking about issues that are affecting them. Now, what I found, sometimes when you get a bigger group and the parents are really talkative, sometimes you'll only get halfway through the session within that 30-35 minutes, and that is fine. What I would do if your parents are really talkative is actually double the session. So we do the first half of session 1 for session 1, but then we do the second half of session 2 a few weeks down the line, where we talk about the strategies and share the videos. So don't feel you've got to drag your parents through a set of time hoops, because you've got to stick to time. Let them talk, let them connect. They will value that more than anything. Don't interrupt it. We can always come back and do the second half of the session on another time, on another workshop. So let's show you what one of the sessions actually looks like. Just give me 1 second. It's okay. So I'm going to go into let's just go in. So when we go back into here, you've got all of the different sessions here. So this is session 1. What is anxiety? I'm going to go into session 2, signs and symptoms. So this is what you put on the board. This is what you're displaying to the parents as they come in. And it's a mixture really of what look like PowerPoint slides and videos. So this is the one that went with the workbook. If you want, you can kind of expand these and make them fill the screen. Here you've got all the individual slides, but as they walk in, we're going to say the aim today is to share experiences and support each other, and we're going to focus on supporting children who struggle with anxiety. And then we click on next. We go over the group rules every time. What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. We share experiences, not advice. We don't talk over each other. And actually, if we're going to be here, let's be here. Let's stick our phones on silent, not vibrate, because they're a distraction, not just to you when you get a call, but to other people when they're talking. I'm just clicking next. And this is the key question. What does anxiety look or sound like for your child? And you let them talk. So the slides and the guidebook guide you through this step by step by step. Then we've got the video. What does
exactly what might
so there's a video here
can present differently
as talking through how anxiety can affect different children differently and what it looks like. Then we're going to move on to the next slide. So the key point here, remember, observe your child to identify which situations cause anxiety to increase, and then not to swoop in too quickly. So that will be related to one of the things that came out in the video. And then we've got the key question. As a result of knowing this, what strategies might help to avoid the anxious thought taking over your child? Bonus, and what is going to make the situation work? And you let them go away and talk 5 minutes, and then you bring them back together, ask them the kind of things that were coming up, really get them to talk about their experiences. So if a parent is listening and they want to talk about things that they think don't work, the way we do that when we frame it is to say, if you want to say you found something that doesn't work, tell us about your experience and why it didn't work for you and your child. And that way, if a parent's saying, well, I found this really useful, and another parent says no, the way we're framing it is like, all children are different. parent A had a positive experience using this approach, and parent B, for them, it wasn't so successful. So it avoids these kind of parenting conflicts where people are saying, we should do that. Well, I don't do that. I do something else. This is about support. We talk about experiences. We don't give each other parenting advice. There's a quick emotion coaching 3-step formula that's explained in the guide. So you just sort of look in the facilitator's guide that walks you through there. And then it gives some strategies which you share with the rest of the group. There's a quick summary slide, and then there's a thank you. It basically says, look, the next session is going to be when we look at brains and bodies. And that's where you say the next date is something of whatever. Let's all make sure we get here. Put it in your phones now. Don't miss it. The advantage of doing that, by the way, in the session is if there's something you've missed, like suddenly there's an assembly and like half the parents can't be there because they're supposed to be going to an assembly at the same time for their kids, you can resolve that there and then, and you get a heads up about it really quickly, so you can reschedule if need be and work with the parents' diaries. So you do one, you in the first half term, do another one in the second half term. You can do them more quickly. They're designed to be flexible. You can do the first half of the session if you've got talkative parents, and then break the second half of the session out. It's all about listening to your parents, responding to what they need, and getting them talking together. When we do that well, what happens is, what we found is the parents really value it. They keep coming back for more and more and more. And actually, when they reach the end of the session, I know a number of schools, at the end of the 6 sessions, the parents have said, we want to keep this going. Actually, we don't need the strategies anymore. Can you just give us a topic each week and we'll talk about the topic? And they come together and it becomes not more autonomous exactly. That's over egging it. But they still need the facilitator just to ask a few questions. But then the parents are actually providing the meat. So key point, they'll come for the strategies. They come for the information on the first 1 or 2 sessions, but they stop for that community, which is so important. So that's how to run your parents' sessions in school. They're very easy to run. They're very easy to get off the ground. Parents value them. They provide a great service, and they improve connections, relationships between school and parents, and they fill a really valuable gap because parents are struggling to get this information nowadays. So many agencies have gone to the wall or been canned. You've got parents waiting forever for diagnoses to meet medical professionals just to get half an hour with someone to get some information about how they can help their child. So yeah, they really value them.